Just sad news in Guthrie. Last week, we normally do our show here on Wednesday nights between 6 and 7-ish. And Phil was out of town, and Ronnie and I were working on the studio setup. So instead of Wednesday night, we did the show on Thursday night. And we have a great audience. A lot of people watch us live, but a lot of people watch us on the recording as well. And one of those people that watch our show all the time, dropped the stars all the time, went back and forth like you fine folks do with us here on the show. Mark Bruning, he'd always drop stars and all that good stuff. So we do the show, had a good show. And I did notice, and we talked about it later, that Mark we didn't see Mark on our show. It was kind of weird.
Very unusual. Yeah.
Unusual. And it was like, I remember, I didn't say it out loud, but I was thinking, man, I didn't see Mark on here tonight. Yeah. But so we get the show. I go to a fast food restaurant, get my kids some tacos, and pull in the driveway and get that phone call that Mark's no longer with us. Lieutenant Mark Bruning, Guthrie Police Department, Woodcrest Fire Department. And it was just a shock. You got 1,000 things going through your mind, but and so it was very quiet at that time. It was just getting out, and man, I went in. I had to tell my wife because I have an officer who lives next door to me and who's really good friends with him. So I was I didn't want to be the one to go tell my neighbor, my friend, my buddy, what had happened. I was like, I hope he knows already, because I can see his unit parked, but his van wasn't there, and so I felt relieved that I didn't have to send it, because it needed to come from someone above, not from me. But he had to know, and I was wanting to tell him. But luckily, I didn't do that. So I take off to Mark's house, and my friend, my neighbor, is there. So it was, I didn't have to go through that. But it is just a reality that it was true, and not that I didn't believe the phone call, but it was hard, and I had to be there as a friend. I was not there for working purposes, reporting purposes, and firefighters pulling up, officers pulling up from so many different agencies, Logan County Sheriff's Office. Obviously, you got the police department, Edmond Police Department, and just a real somber evening, and it's just a shock. And I've said this many, many times that I would, I guess, 1,000 people. I would have named off 1,000 people before ever getting to Mark Bruning, and it was just a shock. And I've known Mark for a while, and I've known him probably for 10 years, but I've really, really got to know Mark where we were texting and talking a whole lot in the last 5 years, probably. Yeah. Became really good friends on not only reporter type deal, but also just friends. And we were supposed to go see Alabama together in Little Rock, and that was daggone it. Alabama got COVID, so we had to cancel our trip, and we lost $800 between us because Ticketmaster is no good on their insurance policy. But but it's just, there's so many different people out there with all their different feelings in that, just sharing mine. But his services were today, Wednesday, at Community Church, and we can kind of get into all the different things there. But the one thing I was saying, and I'll let you guys talk, I just want to get this out real quick, but just the law enforcement and the firefighters, the way they've come together, and they always do, but it's a little bit different. The Edmond officer fell, and you feel that, and you can see police and fire coming in and working together. But when it's somebody professionally, personally, it hits a little bit different. But they transported Mark that night from his house to Oklahoma City, and there was an escort all the way down to Oklahoma City. And then that night, one of the officers was at Mark's house, and he had to leave because he had to go get in full uniform because he was the first shift to guard Mark's body. So since that night, when he went to the medical examiner's office, there was a Guthrie police officer that stayed overnight at the medical exam to guard him, and then he was relieved, and then someone else watched him. Then they brought him back home to the funeral home at Hayes Funeral Home. Brag about them here in a little bit as well. and they stayed guard the entire time. So, and I know last night from midnight to 8, it was Damon Devereaux, the sheriff, who had the final guard there. But there was always a Guthrie officer until last night. Sheriff Damon Devereaux did that. And so that's just a small example of that. And there's so many more to talk about between the firefighters and police working together. And final thing I'll say before I hand it over, and then we can go back and forth and discuss it, was Mark was always big on stuff like this. Just Monday, he passed on Thursday. On Monday, everyone knows he had the memorial mile for the fallen officer for C.J. Nelson, an Edmond officer who his wife Heather knew. It was her training officer. And I don't know if Mark knew him all that well. Maybe he knew him, but anyway, Mark took it upon himself to get that memorial mile where he got people to come out and run and grieve and support and donate for that officer. And that's just one example that Mark, and we'll talk about him here, but that he did. And it was always, hey, he would text me, he goes, hey, we're having that more mile. Can you go down there? Can you come down and do some live stuff? I was like, yeah, I'd be glad to. But he was always wanting to make sure that officer or that firefighter was honored. And so when the first escort came back in, I did it live, and I was trying to be tough and try to report and I was good until I got to the intersection, but it was not sad, but proud moment with that escort, because I knew that's exactly how Mark would have drawn it up to have a beautiful procession into town. And then today's procession was awesome as well. So there's a lot to talk about here, but I'll let you guys, and we can go back and forth here in a second. So, good, Ron.
Well, I didn't really personally know Mark like you guys did. No matter where I lived, whether I lived in Durant, Kansas City, or Ohio, I always followed Guthrie News page, obviously, and so I knew Mark and talked to Chris a lot, and I knew of Mark, but I didn't officially meet him until this past Monday at the Edmond officers at Memorial, right? But before that, on our open mics, he was always on there, and he's always gigging me about my Cub stuff. He always made fun of me wearing my Cub stuff. He said he'd arrest me because I wear my Cub stuff. So in honor of Mark today, I wore all my Cub stuff just for Mark, just to take another nudge at me or whatever. But again, I saw him at the memorial, and the first thing he said, he goes, "Where's that dumb Cubs hat of yours?" So I thought it was real funny. And again, all the stories I've heard all week long about Mark, just a great guy. He had to been, real funny guy. Somebody I feel like I would hang out with. Yeah, just with all the humor that he does, and just the guy that can kind of make you mad real fast and then love him a few minutes later. So yeah, that's what I know about Mark. And again, hearing all the stories this past week, it's been really great to hear those kinds of things.
Yeah, good man. My relationship with Mark is like so many of my relationships. It was because of our children. Had nothing to do with law enforcement or his great service there, his great service as a volunteer firefighter and EMT, but just as a dad. And his daughter Bailey and our son Tyler were classmates, same class, and were good friends. And I knew Mark like everybody, and I knew, just from kid stuff at school. But when we lost Tyler, Mark and Bailey and the family, and they all took Tanya and I and our boys to Ishams to dinner one night. And I didn't really know Mark that well at that point. I knew him, but the fact that he went out of his way to come to us when we were hurting so bad, somebody that he wasn't, we knew each other, but we weren't tight, and invested that in us is something I'll never forget. I think Mark, when I think of Mark, I think of fighter. I think he was a fighter. I think he was a guy that believed in right and wrong. I hate this stuff because we've just in the last few weeks, we've lost two really good men in our community, Clay Tarter and now Mark, and you don't replace people like that. Listen. There's people out there in a job that Mark did in law enforcement. There's always, you're not always going to make everybody happy, but I can tell you this. Mark Bruning believed in justice. He believed in doing what was right. He spent his whole life putting himself out there for criticism and ridicule and then obvious danger. to serve his community. I think the word hero is thrown around way too much in our society, but I will tell you that Mark Bruning is definitely one of those people that was without question a real hero. And then the other thing I think of obviously is his daughter Bailey, and his granddaughter, but our good friend Judge Duell. I thought Luke did a great job today at the service, brought some humor and some levity to the situation. But yeah, we've been with Luke several times. I too was out at Mark's house the evening we lost him, and was out there with Chris and Luke and several other people, and it was just a numb feeling. But if you can have an effect on somebody like Luke, who I think is one of the finest men I've ever met, then that says a lot about who you are as a human being. And so I'm going to miss Mark a lot. Pray for his family. They need it. But Mark was just, I think, the greatest compliment you can give a man is to say they were a good man, and Mark was absolutely a good man.
Yeah, no doubt. You mentioned Coach Tarter,
Yeah.
And with my news duties, I heard the call go out, and I don't know addresses, but I know the addition that he lived in. So I was like, oh no. So I called Mark and said, hey, there's a call. Are you okay? He goes, I'm headed to the house, which eventually was Coach Tarter. And so Mark runs out of his house and goes into Coach's house and starts performing life measuring measures. And
I
so
saw Cheryl post on that
Yeah.
a couple of days ago, pointing that out about
Yeah.
what a great neighbor came down. And Mark was, and Luke said it so well today. He could make you so mad.
Oh yeah.
And then 2 seconds later, he had you laughing. And man,
it's
that's
tough.
a life well led, I think.
Yeah, it is. I mean,
awesome.
there was that Mark that can.
Oh yeah.
A lot of people that see the outside, but once you get to see a little bit of the inside, you get to see the true deal. And he was a great, tremendous investigator. Yeah.
Well, we've had this talk
over
the years, and I told Chris, I said, if a loved one of mine, God forbid, something happened, that's who I would want trying to find the person that did it, because he's a fighter, he's a bulldog. We've all seen over the years him stand up when a lot of people would have folded. On things.
Yep.
And at the end was very vindicated. And I think that's a testament to who he is as a man. And his fighting spirit. But he was at his core, he was, and Judge Duell kept saying it today, he was a giver. I mean, he loved to serve other people. Listen, you're not a police officer, and then out of the blue decide you want to be a volunteer firefighter, and then you become that is a person that knows to do one thing, and that's serve.
Yeah,
that's all. I mean, he's a servant.
One of the first times I remember Mark, I was covering a trial, and with him being the lead investigator, he's at the district attorney's, and it was the guy ended up getting life without parole. But we're in a break, and he comes up to me, goes, he's going to fight. Talking about the defendant.
Yeah.
They go, he's going to fight. I go, you think so? I hadn't picked up on it.
Yeah.
They go, yeah, he's going to fight. It's like, okay. So we're back in court, and that dude, it wasn't within minutes, but it was that afternoon or whatever, after he stood up and went after his attorney. Yeah. And there was a couple deputies in there, and they were like, oh, what's this guy standing up? And so Mark had to go tackle him and took him into the back room to get him away from everybody. And I was like, oh my gosh.
Well,
yeah.
And I got to say this, the pictures today that were shared, I love the pictures when Mark was a little dude.
Yeah.
Had ornery written all over his face. I mean, as ornery and mischievous as you could possibly get. And that's who he was as a man too. For those people that were really close to him, they got to see that side of Mark. Just a good man, a great dad, grandfather, son, brother, husband. Yeah, just a good man. He's going to be missed. Great friend.
Yeah, great service, and I was able to capture some stuff outside the service as well. That I have not shared yet. I was wanting to talk to family today and got the blessing to that, because I didn't know what was personal, what wasn't personal. I didn't want to give anything away until I knew what it was. But and another big thing, huge thank you to the Logan County Sheriff's Office, LifeNet out of Stillwater, and Woodcrest Fire Department. So all the Guthrie firefighters, all the Guthrie police officers, dispatchers, anybody who want to go to the funeral service today, those three, Logan County Sheriff's Office, LifeNet, and Woodcrest, covered all the calls here in Guthrie. So there was deputies taking Guthrie calls, and they would on the other side, but that allowed every single officer, every single lieutenant, every single sergeant, everybody to go do pay their respects. And so a huge thank you to those three. And there was calls. They actually had to go out on calls as it would be a normal day. But a huge credit to those guys as well. There was reserve deputies who came out on a Thursday morning, or no, Wednesday, so many days, Wednesday morning to take their time to allow that to happen. So, and a big one more. I'm sorry, Phil.
Yeah, no, you're
and
good.
One more big thank you to Hayes Funeral Home.
Yes.
They know what they're doing. We're lucky. We have two very, very good funeral homes here in Guthrie, and the directors and their families are awesome. But our families had to go through some stuff, and Hayes, they do a great job, and boy, they should be applauded.
Yeah, Chuck Hayes, great. Done too many of our family members, but he does a great job, and he's always does the best he possibly can, and he's just really, really good.
Yeah,
so we do appreciate him.
Absolutely. I want to share this. Tommy posted. He said Mark was my drug court liaison in 2010, and was a huge influence in me becoming a good guy again. Who knows? If not for him, I might not be where I am right now. And I think that's, and there's countless stories like that, right? Countless stories. And so he had that servant's heart and wanted to protect people, and he's missed. I'm telling you that it's been almost a week now, and I think there's those of us that knew him well just kind of walking around numb.
Yeah.
And it's just hard to believe. Hard to believe.
Yeah. So, his end of watch was today out loud. So I'll try to. I got the okay to share, so I will definitely share that as time allows. So that's just three stories. There's thousands of you out there with those same stories as well. So use social media to share those. So, but we will definitely miss Mark and his dry humor, his great investigative work, and. It's a big void at the police department as well. I mean, they're going to have to move some things around. I think they've already got also at Woodcrest. I think their boardroom or their fire room is now named after him. And I think there's some stuff in the works at City Hall as well. So,
very good.
Yeah, very good.